And we're live.
Amazing. I was just grinning like an idiot at all the people I know that were on there. I was like, Hi, everybody.
As Christelle seems to have either frozen or smile. Kenda is a marketing psychology ninja. She goes around and jumps out of cupboards wearing ninja outfit and talks to people about biopsychology and the like. Well, let's ask the general background question. Like, who is Kenda and how did you end up being a marketing psychology expert, amongst other things?
Amongst other things, being the operative phrasing here. So I'm the CEO and founder of Automation Ninjas. We're a behavioral marketing automation agency. And how did I end up doing this? Well, there's a dark and long question. So I studied forensic psychology originally. So I came to the UK to work in the police force here. Didn't quite work out that way. I ended up starting my own marketing agency. But yeah, so I originally studied forensics. I was supposed to be going into criminal profiling. That was what I wanted to do. And then just out of coincidence of time, ended up in marketing and realized that most marketing just is not catered for the way the brain actually works, at all. And that really annoyed me. And I wanted to set that straight a little bit. So I did. And here I am.
Welcome, Kenda. Tell us what exactly is marketing psychology for those of us who have no idea.
Well, I guess it's the psychology behind buying more than anything else. So there is a distinction to be made here. Like in a lot of the stuff that I talk about neuroscience. There's a difference between neuroscience and psychology. Neuroscience is just the study of the brain. In the same way that, you have various different doctors that study different body parts. Neuroscientists aren't always psychologists. Sometimes they're just doctors that are looking at how the brain works. Whereas psychology is more like why the brain works the way that it works and what makes people do the things that they do. So in the stuff that I do, the marketing psychology is like, this is how people buy. This is why people buy in the way that they buy. And this is how we need to market to help people make better choices, not how to manipulate people into making the choice you want them to make, but how to help people make better choices so that you get better customers and better customer lifetime value and all that good stuff. Yeah.
Tell us why this is important, because you hit on something key that sounds somewhat ethical, and the manipulation part.
Yeah.
The manipulation part is something that just does not feel kosher. So tell us about that.
Well, I think marketers and salespeople have been wanting to manipulate people into doing things that, they don't want to do for a very long time. We want people to buy our products and services. And for the most part, markets are crowded. And you've got to cut through a lot of noise. And there's a lot of stuff online, especially. Consumers want to be online. You don't have a choice about being online or not. That's where consumers want to be. And if you're following your consumers, you've got a lot of noise and stuff that you've got to cut through. And so we've seen the rise of marketing psychology as a way to understand the brain better to get people to convert. And I'm very anti that. A lot of the things that we tend to see done in marketing, you wouldn't get past the psychology ethics committee. If you tried to, say, I want to do an experiment on that, they'd be like, let's take a look at the ethics of that. Is that really okay? And yet we persist in doing it in marketing all the time. We use, people like to call them nudges. And if you think back to, if you've ever read, Nudge is a fantastic book, by the way. I think anybody should read Nudge. If you look back to Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky's Thinking Fast and Slow, all of these are ways that we learn that the brain is making mistakes and therefore that we need to cater things in a certain way to get people to do things. But I think what we've got confused by in this process is that we're trying to manipulate people through errors that the brain is making. And when Nudge was originally written, And when Thinking Fast and Slow was originally written, there we go. There we go. I got my copies here as well. When both of these books were originally written, they were written to help people understand the biases that the brain was making, the mistakes the brain was making, and to cater for that, to stop people from making those errors. If you look at Nudge, like the whole back end of Nudge is about the ethical considerations of doing this, and the fact that they're doing this to get people to do things that they know people wouldn't normally do, like save for pensions. But what marketers looked at that is like, this is an opportunity for us to do something. This is an opportunity for us to go out there and get a higher conversion rate. And you'll go to any conference out there and you'll have marketers talking about psychology and cognitive bias and ways that you can structure your pricing tables to get, you know, the conversions that you want to get and all of these things. And if, as far as I'm concerned, it's not ethical and it's not okay. But also when someone realizes that they're being duped, they really don't like you, because no one likes being duped. So my mission is to get people to de-bias instead and help people make better choices, because that's actually better for customer lifetime value. It's better for your profits. It gets customers that stick around for longer and trust you, and that's what you want. So it's a very long, rambly answer to that.
Yeah. So I'm gonna do a dreadful analogy or metaphor or whatever. I always get confused. Even though I'm normally a writer, I always get mixed up. But let's say that behavioral psychology and nudge stuff is like the Force in Star Wars.
Yes.
What would you say are the Jedi, the good things that marketers and people should be aware of in terms of like biopsychology, and what are the Sith evil stuff that you don't really appreciate in terms of biopsychology?
I love that. That's a great question. So the good stuff that we can be doing is understanding when the brain is going to make a mistake.
Yeah.
And we know that consumers love content. And when I say consumers, I mean all consumers, anyone who's consuming in order to purchase something. So that's B2B, B2C, B2G, so business to government as well. So people want to consume content and they want to make the right choices. That's what we want to do.
Yeah.
We want to make the best choice possible. So when you know that bias is going to happen or people are going to have difficulty making choices, creating content that helps them make a better choice, helps them understand what the risks are associated with things and why things need to be done a certain way. That's the good way to do it. And creating that kind of content increases conversion rates because people are interested. They want to know about pricing. They want to know about buyer's guides. They want to know about how to make the right choices and what to look out for and what mistakes to avoid. That's good content. That's the good stuff, the good juju.
Yeah.
The bad stuff, the Siths of the world, you're looking at funnels that are, like time expiring funnels. That's a classic one, where you use time to create urgency. And then you structure your sales pages in a certain way because, you're utilizing certain cognitive biases to try and get people to make a choice. Because what you're doing at that point is you are causing the brain to make errors and you're causing people to make snap judgments. And those snap judgments, the brain is making without giving considered thought to them. So anything where you're applying significant amount of pressure to somebody to make a choice, that's the bad juju. That is the sort of stuff that I'm not there for. I'm not there for any of the tactics. I'm there for long-term relationships with customers. So anytime you're utilizing a tactic to try and grab attention and you're baiting and switching people and you're doing the nasty things, no.
Kenda, who is your clients? Who are your clients? Who comes to you?
Well, wouldn't you like to know? I have the non-NDA list of clients and I have the NDA list of clients. Yeah, two very separate groupings of people. So we work with quite a range of businesses. So we have an academy. I have my book as well that people tend to buy if they want to do it themselves. That's a lot of small business owners and a lot of sort of in-house marketers will utilize that content. They'll go off and do the things. And then we tend to work with sort of larger, smaller businesses to medium-sized businesses. And we work directly with their marketing teams to help them structure this process out and put everything in place. And then we do work with some large enterprise clients as well, training their teams in the methodology so that they can go off and make it happen. So it's quite across the board. But I'd say my sweet spot is that bit in the middle where I get to work really intensively with somebody for around 6 months to get something happening. That's where my team comes alive.
I'm intrigued to know the type of client that is attracted to exactly what you do, because you're so used to hearing about marketing that is either surrounding a story or how to get the urgent buy or how to get people to think they need something. So I'm curious as to who is attracted to what you do.
I think it's anybody that has the capability for customer lifetime value. I think the businesses that have that longevity and they know that if they can get a customer and they can retain them for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, that's where the money is. So it's the businesses who have that longer view. The panic buying businesses who need to get leads in quickly are not interested in this kind of thing because they want those quick things. But the businesses who go, okay, if I can get a steady customer base and I've got a steady customer base that I know is extremely loyal, then I know exactly how much I can spend on acquiring those customers and on retaining them. And I know what I need to do for all the individual steps. This really appeals to them because churn is a significant problem for businesses for the most part. And churn's just when you lose customers and then you have to replace the customer again. So anybody who's got services, you're looking at big manufacturing companies where they're getting big contracts through for that kind of stuff. This really appeals to them. And for the smaller businesses, I think it appeals to a lot of businesses to have a solid client base that they know is going to stick around rather than having lots of bitty things coming through. I think that's probably the best way to explain it. Anybody who's like really keyed into customer lifetime value, this is something that they get really excited by because they know they're in it for the long haul. Yeah.
I'm going to go controversial here. So,
go on, please do. I like prophecy.
I read a book by somebody called Laura Dodsworth about called The State of Fear, about how the government's been using behavioural psychology in the COVID crisis. Well, actually governments, but maybe.
Well, I want to read that. Yeah.
Do you think there are dangers in terms of the government and big organisations using a lot of these tactics to do things? I mean, obviously you could argue there are good things in trying to make us do things that we should do. But the problem is, like, if the government is not explicit about what those things it decides we should do are, then there are issues. So what's your view as a psychologist and as a marketer, let's say, about how much of these tactics should governments and big organisations be using?
Well, I have a big opinion on this. I really think that we need ethics committees that monitor what we do in a broad sense. So monitor what we do in government, monitor what we do in general in marketing, like the ethics behind Coca-Cola advertising certain types of soft drinks in the way that they advertise them for health purposes, for instance. Those kinds of things, we need tighter ethical controls on how we use behavior in marketing. I think that is a given. To me, that is something that we should be doing. It's something that we need to be focusing on and spending more time on. I feel very strongly about utilizing behavioral nudges in various different things. I'm not comfortable with it, which is why I get people instead to focus on helping people make better choices and helping them be informed, helping consumers be more conscious in the choices that they're making rather than just nudging them in the right direction, because I think we need to make decisions more consciously. So I'm quite anti it in a way. Like when I read nudge, I was really uncomfortable with the idea of manipulating people into making pension choices, into making decisions, even though it's something that's really important that we should do. And the brain doesn't want us to do long-term stuff. It wants us to do short-term stuff because it's more keyed into short-term survival than long-term survival. So we need to be nudged in that direction. But even so, there's an ethical consideration behind it. So I think we need to be more closely monitored in the way that we utilize behavior in marketing. And that's as someone who purports to be a behavioral marketer. I think it's important that we have those controls in place. So no, I'm not comfortable with governments doing it. I'm not comfortable with corporations doing it. Instead, I want us to be empowering consumers, not manipulating them into making choices. I'd much rather we focused on teaching people about why those choices were important than focusing on getting people to make a choice.
Are you seeing a change in culture in any way?
In terms of,
are you seeing marketers making more ethical type choices? Are you seeing a change in the culture? Yeah.
And not because marketers want to.
Okay.
Definitely not because marketers want to, but because consumers are driving it. So I'm sure you've seen all the greenwashing that happens, where every company is now eco-sustainability, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's not because they decided that they wanted to spend a lot of money on being eco-sustainably whatever. It's because consumers want that. They want to spend their money with companies that are making better choices. And they have a big raft of choices to choose from. So they're going to choose the company that does the things that they want them to do. We've seen we see it every year now with Pride. We see all the rainbow washing, where suddenly everybody becomes a Pride facing company, whereas before they didn't have a single thing to say about LGBTQ plus, right? So we see it happening all the time. And the nice thing about it is that it is forcing people to be more better. It's not a great word, but we're forcing us to be better as companies because we know that consumers want them. So there is a big shift in the way that consumers are choosing to work with companies that are more ethical, that are more sustainable. And I like that because I think that we need to be doing that anyway. And if we have to be forced to do it, why not? Right. Mm-hmm. So but yeah, there is definitely a big shift and a big change. You see it happening when, even though Elon Musk wasn't actually utilizing child slave labor for his lithium batteries, it highlighted that was happening. It highlighted that Apple was using slave labor in its factories in China. And people care about that, and they stopped supporting those businesses in the droves that they were. They're still doing it, but it chips away at their profits, and they have to put a better face on. I mean, McDonald's probably the company that had the biggest turnaround from being a company that was known for feeding rubbish to children to turning around and being a very eco-driven company that has decent ingredients in its food, so in its junk food. Let's put a little caveat on that. But consumers are forcing it. So yeah, there is definitely a big shift in it, and it's only going to continue. And, the businesses that ride that wave are going to be the ones that come out on top.
Right. I'm going to change tack slightly because you work for a company called Automation Ninjas. So yes. What is the automation side? I mean, obviously we talked about the psychology side, but what kind of automation should small companies and bigger companies be looking at that you help people with?
So we have like a customer journey framework, an automation journey framework we take people through. There are a series of campaigns that people should have in place. But you're looking at automation from lead magnet automation, lead magnet delivery and follow-up, welcome series. You've got your sales series that you can automate. You have, if you're getting real fancy, and you're the type of business that already has automation in place, you can have your behavioral intent tracking, which is basically tracking when someone is interacting with sales materials that you might have on your site. So rather than just randomly selling at somebody, selling when they are displaying sales intent behavior, you have progressive profiling. So things that you can put in place to learn more about your consumers as they go through your content. So as they consume your content, you learn more about who they are and what they're interested in. You have onboarding campaigns for when customers actually buy. If you're e-commerce, you're looking at recency, frequency, monetary value, campaigns you can put in place for segmentation purposes. And just always, it's all about, all these campaigns are about personalization. They're all about creating a journey that feels personalized for that consumer that's going through the process, but doing that in a leverageable and scalable way. And it sounds complicated and it sounds big and it sounds heavy, and it can be. But to start with, it isn't. It's something as simple as someone signs up for a lead magnet. Let's send them a nice follow-up series that's really catered to what they signed up for and where they are in their journey right now. If someone signs up for the first time ever, let's send them a welcome series. If someone is clicking through to all of your sales content, let's send them a sales series. It's just watching that behavior that's being displayed and preempting what the next step should be. And always staying ahead of your customer, one step ahead all the time, and giving them the journey that they would want.
So what kind of improvements do your clients see then? Let's say if we got X client, we won't name anybody, and they come to you, what is kind of the biggest change? Let's say they just had a terrible website with just like random text on it or something, and now they've changed this all singing, all dancing thing that like got behavioural customer. What sort of growth levels and what sort of changes do people see when they sign up for your services?
You said the biggest change, so I'm going to give you the biggest one. We have a lovely client of ours. They're an e-commerce company, and they're just really great human beings. And they had set up, they have brick and mortar stores all across New Zealand, and they'd set up their e-commerce, and it wasn't working too hot. The online functionality wasn't working great. And we came in and we kind of took that experience that they give people, on the floor of the shops, and we automated it, and we created something that if someone bought online, it would give them a similar experience. And we took their e-commerce and we increased over a year and a half of working with them. We increased their conversion rates by 231%. So significant difference. One of their campaigns, their Mother's Day campaign, we increased it by 358%, the conversion rate of that campaign. So 3.5 times what it was. But we also increased their average order value by like 128%. And, so every time someone was ordering, they were ordering more. They were ordering larger amounts. And that was because we focused on nurture. So we focused on building a relationship with the consumer. And this is for e-commerce, right? Something where you think that those things, they come through fast, and people don't tend to think about that relationship building with e-commerce and how much of an impact it has on the bottom line. So just to give you an example, so those are the numbers, but the campaigns that we put in place, we had a new lead welcome and conversion campaign. So when someone signed up for a coupon code on the site, we didn't just give them the coupon. We had some nice follow-up that taught people about who the company was. So kind of like a welcome campaign, taught them about who the company was, why the fabrics were made in the way that they were made, different properties of different types of fabrics. And so we took that from having around a 1% conversion rate to having a 47% conversion rate, that campaign. Just by making sure we put really good quality nurture, and we optimized it consistently. So that was one campaign we put in. When someone became a new customer, we had a welcome campaign that showed them how to look after their clothing, how to make good care of the garment. And then once they reached a certain point, encourage them to have a second purchase. Then after that, we had RFM that kicked into place, so frequency and monetary value segmentation that partitioned people off and kind of gave people content depending on where they were. The biggest and best improvement was the long-term nurture. So sending good quality content over a longer period of time. So every 2 weeks, they get a blog email that gets sent out to them about something that we know that their audience cares about, but also the company cares about. That is the thing that changed everything for them, was that long-term nurture. That's what caused that massive increase in conversion rates, because they taught people about who they were and they stuck with them for a long time. So that's an example of working with the client, some of the things that we've done.
Kenda, as you're talking about this in your examples, I'm thinking of what we have in America. We have nonprofits, and I think in the UK you have a lot of community type work, community organizations, which is similar. It seems like this would be you would be an incredible organization for nonprofits and community work, because talking about the organization is what would build that long-term longevity. And we know in order for a nonprofit or community organization to survive, they have to fundraise. Do you have clients like this? Do you work with?
Technically, but I can't tell you about them.
Well, do you attract nonprofits? Do you attract community organizations?
I actually did a whole festival for nonprofits, where I was teaching them how to do this process. We have a couple of nonprofits on the books that we work with, some quite big names in the UK. that we help them with their long-term nurture and how to communicate effectively. The great thing about nonprofits is that they really understand the need for doing this. Like it's because they know that fundraising, it's customer lifetime value, right? They know that fundraising is something that happens over time. They're happy to put systems in place that work for the long term and aren't those little quick win systems. So nonprofits totally perfect for this process. Yeah. I got hiccups. I finished my tea.
You're okay. No, as you were discussing this, I thought this would be incredible for that kind of organization.
I'm also a chair on the board of a nonprofit, of a community interest company, the CIC in the UK, because it's close to my heart. These things.
Yeah. Can you tell us really fast? Because sometimes what I found is nonprofits, though they need to fundraise, they don't have the funds, or they don't understand the importance of putting funds towards this. Can you explain why this would be important?
Yeah, because if you need customer lifetime value, you need the systems in place to drive that. So it's not a luxury. These aren't things that, you're putting some money in and, it's something nice for your audience. This is a necessity to keep your customers around for a longer time. We always say our services shouldn't cost anything. So if you're doing it right, you should get your ROI back pretty quickly, pretty sharpish. So this isn't a luxury. Customer lifetime value is what not-for-profits live on. And if you don't have that in place, you're gonna really struggle. So yeah, make it happen is what I say.
It's worth budgeting for, is what
100%
we're saying.
It's 100% worth budgeting for. It's 100% worth sitting down, and you will not be sad that you put the budget aside to work on your engagement with your audience at all. Yeah.
Right. Well, I said to you in the pre-chat that we would talk about what it's going to be your new book, which is about. But let's briefly give you a chance to talk about your existing book. I don't think have you written any books before Hack the Buyer Brain? I'm not sure if you have.
Just content.
Yeah. So what would somebody get out of reading your book, Hack the Buyer Brain? Then what's that book about?
Here's the most important thing you get from it is the fact that the brain is not catered to do the things that we want it to do now, right? So we very much want people to buy things online, and we want them to do things in a certain way, and the brain is just not built for that. So you get a little bit of understanding throughout the book as to how the brain actually works in various different scenarios, and therefore why certain types of marketing work and why other types of marketing don't work. So it's understanding exactly how the brain works and how you can adapt your marketing to make sure that it caters for what the brain needs. So that's what Hack the Buyer Brain is about, how we evolved to survive, not to buy stuff online. And so the implications that has for your marketing, that's what that one's about. And the next book is about cognitive bias and the way that the brain makes errors and how we can mitigate that, and how that's good for your profits as well as just good for being a good human being.
Well, not quite, a little bit over time, but can you briefly, and I know this is a terrible thing, but briefly talk about some of those biases, just so that, well, it's a bit unlikely that somebody watching this interview will suddenly think, oh, I suffer from that. But just as an overview of some of the biggest biases and things that marketers might manipulate unscrupulously.
Oh, gosh. So there are 4 different places in which the brain is going to make bias happen. So if you are in some kind of time constraint, so any time where there is time pressure, the brain is going to fall on its crutches to help it make quick decisions. That's when bias is gonna come in place massively. If you have sort of too much information available, so there's too much stuff around you, too many choices you need to make, too many things, the brain is going to condense information and squish it down, and again rely on crutches to make decisions. So that's just 2 of them. Then if there's not enough meaning or context around something, you're going to struggle and you're going to fill in the gaps, and the brain again will have biases that will happen. And then what's the 4th one? Let me look at my board at the back there. Oh yeah, what we should remember, if there is any like context issues and we're not sure how to encode or recall that information, the brain again utilizes any crutches. So if you think about that, that's time, that's importance, it's cognitive load, and storing information. All four of those things are going to come into play when someone is making a decision with your services. So you get things like ambiguity bias. Ambiguity bias is where we do not like to make decisions at all, and we will avoid making a decision if the decision is ambiguous. So if we don't have full context or know exactly what the outcome is going to be, we will avoid the decision. And sometimes our brains, without us realizing it, will substitute a smaller decision for the larger decision. So it'll just take something else and it'll sneak it in. Or we'll take that information and we will corrupt it and move it towards what we think the ambiguous information means. So we fill in lots of gaps, and we're sneaky about how we avoid making decisions. But it's how the brain kind of evolved to keep us moving quickly through life, and stop us using too much processing power for the most part. So I think ambiguity bias is the worst one for small businesses, because we don't explain our products and services well. So we don't explain exactly what people can expect to receive from the money that they are going to be paying. And so we leave things open-ended. So sometimes people will choose a worse option because it's really clear. So if you can make everything really clear around your pricing, around the process that's going to happen, you make it much easier for the brain to choose. You stop it from utilizing crutches to make choices. So that's probably the worst one that you want to avoid. Any of those four areas you're going to have difficulty in.
Something that I've been studying a little bit and reading about is when there's too many choices, our brain freezes.
Yeah.
Explain that to us. So how do marketers come in and work with this?
You have to simplify the choices for people. So one of the best ways that you can do this is with the buyer's guide. And a buyer's guide is probably one of the most underutilized pieces of content that I ever see people create. So when there's so much choice and people can't understand the choice in the context, provide that choice in that context. So help them understand. These are the broad categories in the industry. This is what it means for you. And what happens when you do that, you get trust. When you get trust, you increase the reward activation that the brain has for your products and services, and you increase the likelihood of them buying from you. So it pays to be nice to your consumers. But yeah, you're 100% right. When there's too much information, too much context, the brain kind of just snarls up and it just doesn't make a choice at all. So we can create things like buyer's guides and pricing, helping information to help people understand what's applicable to them, but also make sure that we're keeping the amount of choices that we're asking people to make small. So don't give them massive amounts of choice. It might seem nice to give them lots of choice, but you're actually not doing any favors for the brain. So keep things nice and simple. And where there is a lot of information, provide that context. Give them buyer's guides. People will consume shit tons of content if it's important to them. And that's the kind of stuff that's important to them. Yeah.
Okay, so let's keep the choices simple. Can you simply explain like how people could possibly make use of your services, where to find you online, and where to find your wonderful book, Hack the Buyer Brain?
That was a very smooth segue, Tim. I'm really proud of you right now. That was so smooth. I love that. Where can you find me online? Nowhere, because I'm a hermit. So, you can find me on LinkedIn. If you want to look at lots of pictures of mushrooms, which appears to be the only thing I ever take photos of with my phone, you can follow me on Instagram as well. But that's a very personal side. That's not a business side. So definitely LinkedIn and Twitter are the two opportunities. And I'm surprised you're not crying, Tim, when I mentioned Twitter, because I'm so quiet on there. But those are two places that you can find me. In terms of utilizing our services, we have an academy for smaller businesses. So if you want to learn how to do it yourself, you can go there. There's template structures. Everything you need is in there. The book, you can find it on Amazon, even though Amazon's mean to us. And you can also find that on our website. So it's just automationninjas.com. Hack the Buyer Brain is up there as an option. And if you're larger businesses, we do consultancy and we do implementation and content services. So you can work with us that way. I think I covered all of your questions, Tim. Did I keep it simple?
Yeah, it was a complicated question posing as a simple one.
As an end, it was great, Tim. Right below me is the Scan Me. If our viewers are watching, they can scan this and they can get more information about Kenda as well. It'll take you to Tim's website and it will have your information, your website.
It's currently got her Twitter handle, which is fairly useless by the sounds of things, and the website for Automation Ninjas. So
there we go.
Just probably click through onto that.
Have a little bit around.
I think about 2 people have clicked on the QR code, but we did have somebody compliment us on Twitter because all the clips are obviously got there like, oh great, I can find the full interview there, which is so.
Oh, that's handy.
I think it's brilliant. And to find your books, which is what I am very interested in. If we go to your website, you said, Kenda, that's where we can find them. Is that correct? And Amazon. Okay.
And Amazon technically, but Amazon keeps wanting people to buy a 50 quid used copy of my book, which seems really odd. And it like puts that up as the one copy. And it's like, there is a whole store that sells all of these books, but you never know. It's definitely on the website.
That's an issue. I'm running I plug my own show actually, which I always forget. But I've got an Amazon live show, Book Chat Live. I'm doing 2 shows on Friday if anybody wants to. But what I get the guests to pick 20, and the number of times I've had to go on and work out whether they've ever actually given me the right book link, because they'll type in somebody's book into Amazon and it'll pick the wrong one, and I'm like, no, it shouldn't be £1,000 a copy. It should be like
exactly
£15. So that is a bit of an issue with Amazon.
It's a total nightmare. So but you can definitely get it off our site. It's the same price. It's no different. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, Tim, I'm going to let you plug your show. I want to hear about this. So Friday, you're going live twice. Tell us about it.
Well, it's on Amazon at the moment. It's on Amazon.com only, but you can get there by typing bookchat.live and following me on Twitter, and it should notify you, hopefully. And Amazon Live is kind of like QVC, but on Amazon.
Oh.
So most of the people doing shows are just like, here's this latest sort of vacuum cleaner or whatever. But I'm trying to do a more sensible show where I interview an author or a notable reader. I actually had Christelle as my first guest on the show. And then the second one was Christina Adams. And I've got Debbie Young, who's a cozy mystery author in the morning, US time, 3:00 UK time. And then I've got Catherine Carrigan, who is a natural healer health author, about 9:00 in the evening UK time. So hopefully, because one of the benefits of that is that I earn affiliate income if anybody buys anything from the show.
Oh, that's handy.
Yes, that's not that I'm after the filthy luster of cash or anything, but it's quite nice to have that as an option.
We would support you if you were.
So anyway, it's been great to have you on the show. And have you got any like? Well, I'm always crap at the endings of these things, but if you had like one sentence of advice to marketers about how they use psychology, what would that be?
Be kind. I think that's literally it. If you are kind to your customers and you are helpful and you show up and you educate them, you'll do it the right way. And you won't be looking to manipulate them and to coerce them to doing something they don't want to do. And you'll reap the profits from that. So just be kind. Be kind and good. Yeah.
Well, Kenda, this has been absolutely wonderful talking to you. I hope marketers listen more and go search you out, because this is just brilliant. So, Tim, thank you for finding her and bringing her on. And have a great
day. Just wander around like, oh, yeah, there's a person on the screen. He was a great speaker at the Marketed Live conference in Nottingham. I've seen her speak before. It might have been Marketed Live before. Was it CMA? Might be.
CMA.
Yeah. Anyway, it's great to have you on the show, and I'm going to play the outro music now.
Thank you.
Usually, Christelle ends up talking over me because I press it at the wrong time, but this time, I'm just going to say goodbye and then press the outro.
This is terrifying for me.
I've made more money in the last 3 years than I did in the previous 7.
Cliche shit, you know.